Okay, so Mark, if you could please hit the record button.
I already did.
Excellent. So welcome to this virtual Plan Amendment community meeting for NPA 2021-0023.01.sh. My name is Maureen Meredith. I work for the City of Austin Housing and Planning Department, and I do all the Plan Amendment cases for the city. If you haven't done so already, please put your name in the chat box, and if you're with an organization, if you could add that as well, I will use that as a sign-in sheet. Also, please mute your microphone if you're joining by phone, and also turn off your video if you're participating online to save bandwidth. And again, this meeting is being recorded. So how to participate today? There's a speech bubble in the menu bar that's either at the bottom or top of your screen. It will open a chat box where you can type in your questions at any time. Please limit general comments until the end of the Q&A session. After presentations, click on the raise hand icon to be called on to speak, and telephone participants will be given an opportunity to ask questions as well. So as you know, this is within the University Hills Windsor Park planning area, and specifically the Windsor Park area. Again, my name is Maureen Meredith, and we'll have Mark introduce himself and then the applicant and their agents.
Good evening. I'm Mark Walters. I'm a principal planner in the Housing and Planning Department, and I will be moderating tonight's discussions. Leah?
Hello, I'm Leah Bojo with Drenner Group. I'm here representing the applicant. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anaya?
Good evening. This is Naya Johnson. I'm also with Drenner Group. I'm here with Leah representing the applicant.
Okay. So, excuse me. So again, my name is Maureen Meredith. Here is my contact information. Heather Chafin is the zoning case zoning case manager, and this is her contact information. And I will also have this at the end of the presentation, so you can also write it down at that time if you don't get it this round. The agenda today, we'll go over basic case information, how to participate in the process, why is there a plan amendment application, what is a future land use map. After the staff presentation, the applicant will give a presentation, and then we will open the floor to questions and answers. So the property address is 3209 Jack Cook Drive. It's 0.5 acres. The case number is NPA 2021-0023.01.sh, and the SH stands for a smart housing project. Smart housing, the S is for safe, the M is for mixed income, the A is for accessible, the R is for reasonably priced, and the T is for transit oriented. The project name is Manor Road and Northeast Drive. The request is to change the future land use map from single family to mixed use. The associated zoning case number is C14-2021-0133.sh. The proposed zoning request is to go from SF3, Family Residence District Neighborhood Plan, to LRMU-VNP for a multifamily residential development. So it's neighborhood, commercial, mixed use, vertical mixed use, and neighborhood plan. There is a property owner applicant, and we have the agent is Leah Bojo from Drenner Group. Guidelines for discussion. Please feel free to type your questions into the chat at any time during the meeting. We ask that you please postpone your general comments to the end of the Q&A session. After staff and applicant presentations, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand symbol on the menu bar. Telephone participants will be able to speak during the Q&A session as well. Attendees will be muted upon arrival and through the staff and applicant presentations. Then staff will open the floor to answer questions in the chat and by attendees raising their hands to speak. Similar questions may be grouped and answered together. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking for the sake of sound quality and clarity of conversation. And if you're having connection issues, please turn off your video until called upon to ask your question. If you have questions after this meeting, they will be answered and made available by request within 5 business days and also posted on the website to speakupaustin.org/NPA, which is also where this recorded meeting will be posted. You can email or call me or Heather at any time with your questions or comments. If you provide written comments, we will add them to the staff case report that goes before Planning Commission and City Council. If you receive this community meeting notice in the mail, that means you live within 500 feet. And when the case is scheduled for Planning Commission and City Council, you will receive that notice in the mail, and it will have instructions on how to participate in those public hearings. So why is there a neighborhood plan amendment? Neighborhood plans are adopted by City Council as amendments to the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. The city charter requires zoning changes to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Most plan amendment applications are to amend the plan's future land use map, and most neighborhood plan amendments have associated zoning applications. This map shows the areas in blue that have City Council approved neighborhood plans. So this is the University Hills Windsor Park plan document. As you can see, it has various elements of the plan. These are the sort of words, the guiding guidelines to the plan. It also has a future land use map, and these colors represent broad land uses. For example, the current land use on this property is yellow, and that is single family. Through the proposed zoning, the request is to change the yellow to brown, which is a mixed use land use. This chart shows in general how the various zoning districts correlate with the broad land use categories. Again, this property is zoned SF3 and it has the yellow future land use designation. And with proposed zoning of LRMUV, again shows it how it correlates with the brown land use, which is mixed use. This is just an aerial photo that shows the property. This is a screenshot of Google Map that shows it's just north of Manor Road. You can see Springdale Road. And further to the right, you see University Hills Public Library, which is off of Loyola Lane. This is a Google map of the property. This is a FLUM map that shows the property is yellow, which shows the single family future land use designation. This is the zoning map, SF3. So this just shows an overall growth concept map from the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. And this map shows the property in relation to the various town centers. So you see the Highland Mall Station to the far left on the top and Mueller Station. Manor Road and Springdale and East 51st Street, you see with those brown lines shows that those are activity corridors. Excuse me, this map just shows how the Capital Metro bus routes and urban trails run in relation to the property. That ends my presentation. I'll stop sharing my screen. And Leah can start her.
Great, thank you. Let me just get my screen up. Can y'all see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. So I'll try to go quickly and not repeat too much of what Maureen already presented, but this project is called Manor Road and Northeast Drive. Also, here's an aerial, again, just to give everybody sort of a context of where we're talking about. Here's a zoomed in shot. Our intention on this project is to keep this house, which faces Jack Cook, and to remove the pool and put the mixed use project here on the back facing Manor Road. We are obviously very early in this process, but what we do know so far is that we've committed to 40% of the units at 80% MFI through the Smart Housing Project program. We have agreed to the regular term for that. You know, smart housing has a very short term, but we've already agreed that any affordable units that we put on the site would be for the regular 40-year term for rental. And the idea is to have a first floor pedestrian-oriented use with the units above probably around 10. And again, ideally, we would be able to keep this house and just use this portion of the site for that mixed use development. Here's the zoning map that we just looked at. What we are asking for is basically the same thing that this site next to us has, LRMUV NP. We didn't request the CO as part of our application, but we're happy to agree to the same CO that this site has. This CO prohibits a service station, and we're not planning on doing a service station. So, you know, we're happy to include that in a conditional overlay if y'all would like. We're also open to talking about other uses if you'd like to talk about other uses that you would want to have not permitted on the site. This site here is also zoned single family, but it is currently in process to be redeveloped with an affordability unlocked project on it. So it's going to be a higher density single family kind of use than just what would be allowed on a normal single family lot. It's going to be 2 units with multiple bedrooms to serve. It's going to be run by Casa Marianella, and it's going to serve folks who are coming here as refugees. And then we have, of course, the multifamily zoning. So we feel like, you know, this right now is kind of a disjointed transition, but we're hoping that between us rezoning to match this site, doing those affordable units, along with this affordability unlocked project, and then MF2, that we'll be creating more of a more seamless transition there. This is similar. This is the future land use map. We again are asking for mixed use, which would match what's over here. This site won't have to change its zoning or its FLUM because of the way the affordability unlocked project works. So it'll look different, but it will. But as far as what's on the ground, I think it will really provide a transition there. And this is just some details about the site. It is just over an acre. I'm sorry, just over half an acre in size. Again, currently has a single family house on it. Manor Road and Jack Hooker urban roadways. And as Maureen mentioned, it is on the 20 route of Cab Metro, which is a fantastic frequent bus route. And so here is the summary of our request, zoning and future land use map. And so ultimately, we are hoping to have the support of the neighborhood contact team for our request. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Leah. So if you'd like to ask any questions of the applicant or staff, go up there at the top or the bottom of your screen. You see a smiley face with a hand. Click on that and it'll pull up a raise your hand and do that, and we can start this round of questions. Okay. First question is from Kimberly Johnson. If you would unmute Kimberly and ask your question, please.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you. I'm concerned about just a few things. What about the parking? If you keep in the house, then where's the parking for these units? And again, how many units is this going to be? And is the units only going to be for refugees, or is the units and the house are only going to be for refugees?
So first of all, I hope I didn't make this confusing by talking about this project. I apologize. The refugees is a separate project. It's just next door to us. That's just what's happening on this lot next door. What our project is not necessarily for refugees. It is just a small mixed use project. We'd be probably talking about maybe 10 units, 10 residential units over that first floor pedestrian oriented use. And parking is something we would have to figure out when we get to site plan. It is a tight site. It is constrained, and again, hoping to keep the house. Parking may be the limiting factor on how many units we can fit. We're just not quite that far down the line yet.
Okay.
I hope I answered.
There's a chat question from Rick Kravaniak regarding the surrounding SF3 and how that might trigger the compatibility standards and otherwise affect your proposed project?
So yes, that is true. There is compatibility triggered by these SF lots nearby, and we would have to comply with any compatibility that is triggered. I'm not sure how it would work on. I mean, it's zoned SF3, so I'm not sure exactly how this one would work, but certainly compatibility will be triggered by these other SF uses and zonings.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Hector from Windsor Park, if you would unmute and ask your question, please.
Hi, yes, thank you. So what we're finding is that the city doesn't really hold developers to the commercial requirements under VMU. Windsor Village, as you might know, is slated as a VMU project, and in our neighborhood plan was listed as a town center type of development, which is not what is happening over on that property. So I guess my question is to the developer and to you, the city as well. How do we ensure that this zoning designation results in the type of project that the VMU is intended to provide, which includes that ground floor commercial and a street frontage that is actually public, and that would be facing onto Manor in this case?
I mean, if we participate in the VMU ordinance, we obviously have to follow the rules. I do know that the city does allow live work to meet the first floor commercial requirements, as long as the first floor is designed to commercial standards. All I can really say at this point is that we will comply with the program, and our intent is to put a commercial use on the first floor, not do a live work substitution. But I don't know how else to say. I mean, that's what we're intending, but we're also, we are very early in this project. Like keeping the house, for example, is the goal, but I can't say I'm 100% confident that we'll be able to do that. So we would just have to work with the city and make sure that we can meet their requirements.
Yeah, and as regards to the zoning and mandating certain things, when you get a variety of zoning like the red one there on the corner of Northeast and Manor Road, that alphabet soup, that MU and the V are options and not mandatory. Those are just saying, well, they can do this or that, or they can do this, or they can do this, this, and that. It's not really, there's nothing that mandates it other than perhaps some streetscape improvements based on your type of roadway that you're on, but for any project.
I would add that with the single family, with it the way that it is today, it definitely won't have commercial because it's not permitted. So I'm not sure what this property owner's plans are, but if we are able to get the mixed use zoning, I think that's certainly the best chance there is at getting that kind of first floor retail.
That answer your questions, Hector?
Yeah, it does, and I think the point that I want to reiterate is that the vertical mixed use brings a lot of bonuses to the table, and if the neighborhood isn't getting the type of project or the quality of project, then it's hard to justify those bonuses that are given. So it's in essence a kind of an exchange. And I understand that they're not required to put a VMU project on there, but if the project does want to pursue those VMU, that VMU designation and receive those bonuses, it seems important to kind of uphold both ends of the bargain. Thank you.
Thanks. For Rodney Ahart, do you have a question? If you can unmute and ask your question, please.
Sure. Thank you so much. I have actually a two-part question. I think one is directed more at city, and then I think the other one would maybe, Leah can probably handle. But I think the first piece is just if the city could kind of lay out the process. We have a neighborhood plan amendment. We also have a rezoning process, just kind of from application to approval. This is like one of, one of the first cases that we have where we have both of those kind of happening concurrently. So, I'd really like for the city staff to just kind of lay out what that process is. And then my second part of my question is for Leah. And I know that the developer for this project is AM-2021. I'm just wondering if you could provide the neighborhood any information about other projects that they've done in the neighborhood that maybe we could get some information on as well.
So Mark, you want me to start with the process?
Yeah, my dog's barking, so.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is Maureen, the plan amendment case manager. I'll just walk you through basics of the process. So as you know, once the application is filed, the plan amendment and the zoning case, this is an ordinance required community meeting. After this meeting, I will present this case to my planning team. We will make a recommendation on the plan amendment request. I will report back to them the questions and concerns from this meeting. We'll look at the neighborhood plan. We'll look at Imagine Austin, and we'll make a staff recommendation. We'll pass that on to the zoning planners. They'll make their recommendation on the zoning request. We'll work with the planning contact team on getting your letter of recommendation as we start moving forward to planning commission and city council. That's kind of the basics. Is there any clarification you need for that?
No, that's perfect. Thank you, Maureen.
Okay.
And then Rodney, to answer your questions about the developer. So, as is often the case, this site is owned by an LLC. The person is named Ann Malmera, who's an individual. And he has done some other projects around town. I don't know if he's done any in y'all's neighborhood, but I'm happy to talk to him and get a good example of something similar and send it to y'all to share, if that's okay.
That would be great. Thank you, Leah.
There's a couple questions in the chat. This is from Nadia. Is there a height limit? We saw a project recently on Berkman that couldn't figure out how to meet compatibility distance and provide the parking they needed and fit the commercial and enough residential to make it profitable.
So the height limit for LR
It's 40 feet.
is 40 feet. Okay, good. Thank you. I don't know that we would be able to meet to get to 40 feet because of the compatibility that was mentioned earlier. So, the base district allows 40 feet, but I would expect that I'd say there's a good chance that, I don't know. I'd say there's a good chance we don't get to 40, or maybe we get close, but we would obviously comply with whatever height limit is applicable, whichever one is more restrictive, the base district or the compatibility step backs.
And just to note that the single family house there, depending if you're in McMansion or not, can go 32 feet in McMansion and 35 feet if you're not, basically. So you can get a 35, theoretically a 32 to 35 foot tall building there under the current zoning. Just not to play apples and oranges here, but that's just how tall it can be under the current regulations. And there's a comment from Rick, says, but Mark, one chooses a zoning and overlay, i.e. VMU or MU or LR to develop under and must then use those requirements. If they choose at point of site plan to do a VMU building, then they will be held to those standards. But if they just want to put in a boutique, they'll build it to the LR standards or do something MU, and because for whatever reason, they'll be held to those standards. So whatever they file at site plan would be the direction the project has to take. So are there any other questions? From Kimberly Johnson, if you would unmute Kimberly and ask your question, please.
How are they going to access these units? Are they going to access it from Manor Road, or are they going to access it from Jack Cook? And if you can't keep that house, then what are the plans?
If we can't, we don't know where our access would be yet. That's something we have to talk with the city about. Obviously, this is a through lot, so usually you don't have so many options, but in this case, we would need to talk to the city about what their preference is. If we keep the house, obviously the house part at least would keep access off of Jack Cook, but it's unclear whether they would let us take access off Manor Road for the other portion. And the other question about the house is if we're, if we're able to keep the house as intended, basically, we'd have like a skinny building here pulled up to Manor, and then we'd have the house facing this way. If we're not able to keep the house because we can't make it fit, probably the building would just, depending on what the issue is, either there would be parking back there or the building would be back there, would extend back to that portion of the site.
Thanks.
Basically,
Any other questions?
it's a nice house that he would, that we'd like to keep and be able to use. It's just, it does present a constraint on it's already a somewhat small site.
Is there any other questions? Anybody?
This is Maureen here. Can I ask a question?
Yes, Maureen,
So-
you may ask a question.
So will the house stay a single family home, or will it be converted to multi-units by some means?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, it wouldn't be like many units, but I suppose it's possible that he would split it into two because it's a pretty big house.
Okay, thank you.
And we have a question from Hector. If you would unmute and ask your question, please.
Is it possible just to file a comment or make a comment that kind of to just suggest against live work onto Manor? The live work units don't necessarily get converted into commercial, so it can be another way of just doing housing and not doing commercial. I don't know if there's a way to make a comment at this point, or at what point would we be able to make that kind of comment?
Thank you.
This is Maureen here. What I like people to do for comments like that, if you could type it in the chat, because it is then saved. And then when I write the case report and I make write the summary of the meeting, I just cut and paste those comments into my case report, and I can make sure it's word for word.
Oh, I'm sorry. I actually don't have access to my chat. I'm on a cell phone somehow.
Oh, you're on the cell phone? Okay, then you can email me
Yeah.
that,
Okay.
and I'll add it to the case report.
Okay. And I'm sorry, your name is?
Maureen Meredith.
And
Maureen
her
Meredith, okay.
her contact information should be on the notice that you received in the mail.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So do we have any other questions? Yes, one from Nadia in the chat. Is compatibility required between the existing house to remain and the new mixed-use building?
Good question. It would not be assuming that we did a site plan that included all of it on one site, which would be the plan. So the site plan would follow the whole lot, and so it wouldn't trigger within the lot.
Okay, we have a raised hand. Let's see. Again, Kimberly Johnson, if you would unmute and ask your question.
And so my question is, a lot of times when we get these type of projects in, we lose the integrity of the neighborhood. And so with this particular owner, how do they take that in consideration, but trying to keep the integrity of the neighborhood? And I say that because what happens is that the people who've been in that neighborhood for some time, they end up being displaced. They no longer can afford to live in that neighborhood. And so how do you, what is your plans for that, and trying to make sure this is something that will truly be a part of the neighborhood, a part of the community, without others trying to, being displaced? And you talked about affordability. My question is, what does that look like? What is that? Define
Sure.
what you all are talking about is affordable.
Sure. So, as far as compatibility with the existing neighborhood, that's a big part of why we're hoping to keep that house, because that way, Manor is a bigger road, and it has the transit service, and so it would make, that's why our ideal situation would be to put pedestrian oriented uses and the higher density housing on the Manor side facing the road, which, and I knew already that that pedestrian-oriented uses are important to y'all, and so that was a big part of that conversation about pedestrian-oriented uses facing Manor Road. But then, if we're able to keep the house, what we're really being able to do is take this pretty big single family lot and have it kind of serve both purposes. As it faces into this part of the neighborhood, it would still have the single family home on it. And as it faces Manor Road, it would have something a little higher density to provide housing and provide that, that mixed use. So that really is the goal of the developer, is to meet that, to meet exactly what you're saying with this sort of creative design. I think it's not really common for folks to try to keep a house on a lot like that, but he's really intent on it if we can make it work. And then the affordability. So, you know, again, we're early on, but we submitted it as a smart housing project, which I think Maureen mentioned early in the presentation. And what that means is that we are committing to at least 40% of the units at 80% MFI at this point. The term on smart housing is, I think it's 15 years. It's shorter on smart housing than it is on the other affordability programs. But another thing we've already talked about is that we would definitely commit to the term that the rest of the programs use. Like VMU, for example, would require 10% of the units to be affordable. We're talking about a higher level. We're talking about 40%, but we'd be doing it for the 40-year term that VMU requires, and not just the shorter term that smart housing is. I don't know why smart has its own length, but so you know, again, even at this early stage, we are talking about you know, a significant portion of the site being affordable, and really trying to keep that character in mind on both sides of the site.
Yeah, I think, excuse me, smart housing was one of the first incentive-based housing programs in the city. And I don't know that it's been, the terms of affordability have been revised since the early, I think 2000 or 2001.
Yeah,
So
it's like different than all the rest, but we would do the full 40-year term for rental.
And there's a question in the chat from Nadia. Is the adjacent property owned by the same owner developer? And I assume they mean the one to the west.
This one?
Yeah, I think so, because or the other one for that matter, or either one of them owned by this property owner in the middle.
Yes.
If so, wouldn't it be useful to rezone both lots to avoid compatibility issues between the two lots? Maybe allowing for more creative solution that fits in the neighborhood, uses some common driveways, shared driveways, etc.
So this, sorry, my mouse keeps going away. There it is. This site is owned by the same, it's not the same LLC, but it is the same person. But this project is already set. Like, this is the Casa Marianella project that I mentioned early on. And so, I mean, you make a good point about the zoning, but I think it's not necessary because of affordability unlocked. So we decided to just leave this one. That does not mean that there couldn't be some sort of shared elements, including, you know, driveway or other things. We're just not far enough down the line to know yet exactly how they'll work together. But they will, you know, they will be complementary.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Either raise your hand or in the chat. Well, Maureen, while we're waiting, see if anyone else would like to ask any questions, could you throw up your contact information slide if you, and we can just quickly go over. I know you already mentioned the next steps in the process, but if you could just quickly go over them again. And
Sure. So, like I said, after this meeting, my team will meet to make a recommendation on the plan amendment request. We'll pass that recommendation on to the zoning team. They'll make a recommendation on the zoning request, and then we will start working with the applicant on scheduling it for planning commission and city council. We'll work with the planning contact team on those dates and when your letter of recommendation would be needed to be submitted in order to have it with the staff case report. If you can't meet that deadline for the staff case report, it can always be submitted as late backup to the planning commission and city council. So, and I guess Leah can keep us informed if there are, you know, meetings possibly scheduled with the team separate from this one, and we can just work around those types of events.
okay.
Sounds great.
Well, if someone said something.
I'm sorry, I just said, this is Leah. I just said that sounds great, keeping y'all in the loop of additional meetings.
Okay, we have a question from Nadia. If you would unmute Nadia and ask your question, please.
Oh, just that last thought was, is the developer required to meet with or reach the families that are directly adjacent to the project?
There's no regulatory stipulation saying you must, but I think that it's a really, really, really best practice.
I mean, I just was bringing it up knowing how much difficulty the city and other public systems in Austin have reaching families. And so I just guess I would urge the developer to reach out directly to those families, even if it takes, stopping and knocking and calling to try to make sure they inform them about the project.
Yeah, we can certainly put contact information on doors. It's a little hard. I think that's kind of what the notice is hopefully to serve as. We don't know who those folks are, obviously, but I'm more than happy if y'all know who any of those folks are and you can put us in contact. That would be great. And we can certainly put tuck letters in people's doors to let them know how to reach us and all of that. But it's always a little bit of it.
Yeah, well, particularly under the current circumstances.
Doesn't
Do
make it
you, I was going to say, Leah, could you put your contact email in the chat so people at the meeting here tonight could write that down?
Absolutely.
While she might be doing that, Kimberly, if you can unmute and ask your question.
And just to kind of reinforce what the other person said about getting in contact with the residents, I highly recommend that. A lot of times with these projects, the person who's trying, the person who's involved in, wanting to make the changes, they don't let the community or the residents, especially the ones that are right in the middle of it, they don't let them know about it. So yes, please go to whatever extent that's necessary to contact. And when you do, if you're putting letters in, the doors and all of that, when you write that information, put it in layman's terms so they can truly understand it. Be careful about using acronyms. I know a lot of times when you're in the city and you're doing these kind of projects, you use the acronyms, and for the everyday Joe person, they don't even know what that means. So please, be really sensitive and really give the people who are going to be impacted by this, give them the opportunity to, really be engaged. If you, word it so they don't even know what that means, then they feel out of touch. And, they're like, oh, I don't even know what this means. So, I'm not going to do anything. But please be really sensitive to that and really do, right by the people in this community.
It's great advice. And actually, into Nadia's question there, so voicemails, if y'all have phone numbers for folks, I'm happy to call, but I don't have a way to get phone numbers easily. So if y'all know anybody who lives around, nearby, please don't hesitate to send them my way.
So Rick, could you unmute your yourself and ask your question, please?
Sure. Can you just remind me quickly what the proposed zoning is?
Yes, it is LR MU V NP.
Okay, so the MU, if the, I don't really know what the nearby neighbors want, but to have the MU on the property then negates the that there would be a retail use, because with that, you could come in and just build apartments. And if there's some desire for that immediate area to have to have a commercial use on this property, I would like to see the MU removed from it. If there's not any concern about that, then it's fine to stay. But you know, that gives the owner an option of just doing purely residential development, multifamily. But and then, did I understand that if you're developing under the VMU, that live-work units are not an acceptable substitution for that commercial frontage?
I believe that the city is allowing live work designed to commercial standards to suffice on VMU projects right now. That is not what
So-
we're proposing at this time, but I know that there are other instances where that has been permitted.
Okay, so designed to commercial standards, because I'm seeing what are called live-work units that are basically just an apartment that has a ground floor entry. And so that you're talking about something that would actually have commercial standards for the ground floor.
Yeah, like when I've discussed this on other projects, it usually means ceiling heights for commercial, parked to commercial standards. The doorway, like you're talking about, has particular requirements, things like that. I can find out in more detail if you'd like, but that's sort of the general feedback I've heard from the city on that front.
Okay.
Also, Rick, I think if they wanted to keep the house, I think they would need to keep the MU, because I don't know if the V would actually allow for them to have that as a residential unit.
Yes, that's a very good
So
point.
can you split the zoning and put the MU just on the Jack Cook side of the property? Again, it's sort of what the neighborhood or the immediate area would prefer to have. If they're okay with there being all apartments there, and it doesn't sound like that's what your developer is interested in doing, but I've seen it happen before where, oh, well, this is not going to work for you. You have a lot of questions to answer on this project, on the feasibility of it at this point, between compatibility and parking and keeping that house. And so there's a lot of unknowns at this point. So anyway, I don't need personally to know these things because this is not terribly close to my house, but I just think that there ought to be more outreach made to the community to find out, well, do we really want commercial here? Would we be fine with just having apartments? So that's my biggest concern, and I'll stop now. Thank you.
Okay. And this always tends to happen in these meetings when we say we're getting ready to wrap up. People remember they have questions. So Nadia, if you would unmute and ask your question, then I'll go to Kimberly Johnson after that.
It was just a follow-up question. I wrote it in the chat. Under the proposed zoning, if they can choose to only do multifamily, could they also choose to only do commercial?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so under the proposed zoning, if the local residents don't want to see a commercial property fully, then they might be concerned about this, it sounds like. So, okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
Ms. Johnson, if you would unmute and ask your question, please.
I was wondering, have you thought about reaching out to the neighborhood associations that are going to be impacted? And if you haven't, I would highly suggest that you do so, because then that gives the neighborhood associations also the opportunity to pass along this information and maybe have those residents and community members who haven't had a chance to be involved, this will give them an opportunity to be involved if you reach out to the neighborhood associations.
I met
them.
On Monday, we met with Rodney and his group. We did do that first, and then we also I was put in touch with Seth to meet with Seth Fowler to meet with the neighbors across the street as well as in addition to this meeting. So I certainly appreciate that, and yes, that is definitely a priority of ours.
And we have a question from Seth Fowler. If you could unmute and ask your question, please.
Yes, this is a comment as it pertains to the question Ms. Johnson had. I'm the University Hills contact team chair. But I did forward this information to the secretary of our University Hills Neighborhood Association, who in turn forwarded it to the membership, which of course would include the president of the Neighborhood Association. So, Ms. Johnson, I do appreciate your question, but our members are informed. If they do require additional information, I will certainly contact Ms. Bojo and we'll do a Zoom. But thank you, ma'am.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Well, if not, I think we can end a little early and we can get back to our lives. Again, if you have any questions about the neighborhood plan amendment process, you can contact Maureen Meredith. And about the zoning, it's Heather Chafin. So with that, Maureen, anything else you'd like to add or before we sign off?
I was just going to say the recorded meeting will be posted to the Speak Up Austin website tomorrow. So if you wanted to watch it again, or if somebody missed the meeting tonight, they'll be able to watch it online tomorrow.
And Leah, would you have any parting comments?
I don't think so. Just that, my email is in the chat and my phone number and everything, is on the notice, and just feel free to share my contact information with anyone who has questions. I'm always happy to talk or meet with anyone about the project.
Okay. With that, I think we'll end tonight's evening and to be in tonight's meeting, and we can get on with what we were planning to do. So I'd like to thank everybody for sharing their time with us. We really appreciate that. And with that, bid you good night.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Sure.